Hey, Yetta, do you remember Gumby?
You sure? Like the little green guy that was all flexible?
Yeah, I remember playing with him and he never broke, even though my strong guys broke.
Moving forward with the Dekker team. Moving forward together with the Dekker team.
And so we are, don't want to break you. And instead, we want to say we are honored that for over 35 years, we've been able to come alongside you, not only selling, buying, and investing in real estate over 3,117 times, really coming alongside you to build your finances, build your faith, build your fun, and even strengthen, heal in relationship. We're going to discover that in this season, the best way not to be broken by the winds of change is by being flexible.
Yes. And really, I was just thinking about that. That applies to sellers and buyers. In times of uncertainty, they must both be more flexible with what they're willing to accept or what they're willing to pay based on the chaos that's going on and their personal situation as to why they want to buy or sell.
Well, and even more flexible in terms of what renovations to do in advance, what maintenance to do, what to take on when you're doing a building inspection. Like the whole thing, every aspect of the real estate journey requires more flexibility when there's a lot of chaos going on because people's tensions are higher. The nerves are, we'll talk about nervous system in a minute, but everything is just more awkward and difficult and demanding. And so the only way we can kind of mitigate that is not let the stress take us away, not run away and hide and stop, and remembering to really be bendable.
Yeah.
Like Gumby.
Yeah. Because you know what? There's strength in the ability to be flexible. Because you look at the trees, for instance, right? You see some trees break and other trees are blowing in the wind and they're moving. And when they're flexible, they tend not to break. But if they're rigid and the top needs to move, what happens is it snaps, right? If something's dry or just too rigid, it will break. Even buildings. Like I remember when they were building the CN Tower, they designed it that it could flex. Even though it's made out of concrete, it had to be able to flex a certain amount so that it could move with the winds.
And I think as you're talking about flexibility and bendability and movability and not getting stuck, doesn't mean it isn't scary. Right? There's this sense of just because it's scary, it doesn't mean we don't have to do anything. And in fact, when we don't do anything, that's when potentially we break because an indecision or no decision is still a decision.
Absolutely. And I love what you just said because it reminded me, I'm going back to the tree analogy. Sorry, honey. But in a forest of trees, the roots are interconnected and it's a lot harder to tip them over. But when they're by themselves, a wind can knock them over because they're not interconnected. And it's the same thing with people. If you're staying by yourself in the times of chaos and you're trying to resist the winds of change and you're not talking with people, you're not in a community, that's the time you can get tipped over. Right? And break.
And even our business owners, like we're finding this season the hardest of our lives, really, other than maybe the first few years when we launched our business. This season is the toughest. And so that's one of the biggest reasons we're thrilled that our Ultimate Sales Machine boot camp got moved almost a year. And we said, what are you doing? Well, we had no clue at the time that it was going to be a blessing in disguise.
Yeah. So June 5th is a chance to have business owners come together and grow their roots together, support one another in that community. And you just got to jump on our website, dekkerteam.com. And there's a little link or a pop-up. You can click on that, get more information about the boot camp. And if you're not a business owner and you're listening to this, you probably know a business owner. And it would be great to introduce them to this system because they will thank you for it.
Yeah. And what happens for us, and I keep thinking about the nervous system. I've said it 2 or 3 times. And I'm going to, I think, take us down a little bit of a thought process, which I actually really got more acquainted with when I was taking a course on the voice-body connection. It was an incredible course quite a few years ago, and I've watched it several times because, as you've probably figured out by now, I need to learn things many times before I can own it and it becomes part of me. You know that, Ken. And I suspect you as our listener hear us talk about similar things again and again and again because we know it's not one and done. So with our nervous system, I used to think that it was really just a matter of it was either in good shape, functioning as it should be, or I was going to go fight or flight. Fight or flight, right?
Yep.
What I learned is there's actually another layer. There's that first one where she fondly called it stay and play. We feel good, everything's fine. And then the next layer on the rung is that fight or flight where we have natural human strength and we're ready to either lift a car off somebody or we're willing to fight somebody because we feel like it's awful, the situation. There's a third layer though, and it is collapse and freeze. And that
kind of like the deer in the headlights.
It's not fight or flight, but it's actually hide and collapse and freeze and just get out of the situation. And so the real fear in a season like this, where there's unprecedented change, and we keep saying unprecedented, and then a year later we can say there's something else that's more unprecedented or even crazier than what was already there, and it layers. So it creates this sense of the only safe thing to do for many of us is to hide in our houses, hide under the covers, literally freeze and collapse. And that's not good. So you need to work your way up through in the nervous system, acknowledge it, admit it, because I've been there. There were days, weeks, not months or years, which is a good thing. But how do I get past that hiding and collapsing to get through the fight or flight and then move my nervous system back up so that I can stay in play?
And that looks different for some people, right?
Absolutely.
It looks like, oh, I'm going to ignore the bills, right? I'm not going to pay them and they don't exist. It might be, I'm going to spend more time in bed because it's depressing and I'm sleeping more and I just don't want to tackle life. And it can be fight, like you're working 60, 80 hours a week because you're in the fight of your life. And it can be, I don't know what to do and I need to seek wise counsel. And I think that's
back to the play and stay though.
Yeah. And playing and staying, come and play with the market. Play with, like, maybe you think you've lost some equity because you bought your house 3 years ago, or maybe you've gained some equity because you bought it 10 years ago, or you bought it 2 years ago. Doesn't matter. If you're thinking maybe it's time to buy or sell or whatever, just come and play. We'll examine the pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, and I think what he means by come and play is let's just have a conversation. Get your data, get your research. Like, we are not going to push you to make a decision until, and even then we won't push you, but we will guide you to make one once you have your data. Get the information specific to you. These shows don't go past the general knowledge. They can't.
Yeah, they can't. And together, when we go forward together, we've got this.
Moving forward with the Dekker team. Moving forward